What's up, everybody? It's Charles. Today I'm going to be taking your questions on firing customers, subframe removals, losing your keys, and more. This is episode 238 of the Humblemechanic podcast. All right, so I hope you guys are all doing awesome today. If you want to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in the subject, ask that question, enter button a couple of times, then give me the details of the question. Helps out a ton when going through all the emails that I do get. Also, if you don't see your question on a show like this, be sure to hit that quick videos playlist on YouTube where I just do one question per video. There is an audio-only version of these and most other videos that we do over on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or of course, as always, at humblemechanic.com. And real quick, if you want exclusive content, discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, Sonic Tools, USP Motorsports, Adams Polishes, Kerma TDI, and a whole bunch more, check out that Crew membership program. Awesome way to help support the show, but more importantly, you get crazy good discounts and you get the VW Audi training manuals that I build for the classes that I teach. That's like $3,000 worth of value just in that one benefit alone. So as always, links down in the description. That's enough of that. Let's hit your questions. First one up is from Paul. I unfortunately have to kick a customer out of the shop. Cheap parts and not willing to do the repair correctly. This is in my personal shop, not my pro shop. I would love some advice. It's a cylinder head on a 92 Subaru Justy. Lots more to be explained, but I'll leave it at that. Trying to figure out tact and diplomacy. Thanks, Paul. Paul, so this is like every dealership technician's dream come true is to fire that one customer that you really just shouldn't be working on. Now, before we talk about firing a customer, this isn't something anybody ever really wants to do. That's business you're getting rid of. But there are just some situations, some people, some customers that you're just not gonna get through to, that either they don't have the means or they don't want to, or you're just not a good fit. And not being a good fit, that's okay. It's totally fine to not have a good working relationship with someone, especially when you've exhausted all the other possibilities. It's just like your coworkers. Some coworkers you really like, other coworkers you'd like to smack upside the head because they do dumb stuff or whatever. We've all had that. To expect everyone to always get along perfectly is completely delusional, but it's, I do think, always worth the effort to at least try. So let's talk about firing customers, how to handle it, how to do it. Well, I'll tell you how not to do it, Paul. I wouldn't call them up and say, hey, Mr. Customer, you're a jerk, you're cheap, I'm tired of working on your car, I hate you, you're ugly, your car smells, hang up, come get your piece of junk, right? You don't do anything like that. So the best way I've seen to handle something like this is just to be honest and upfront, but nice about it, and have a just flat, straight conversation with the customer. Hey, Mr. Customer, we've been working together for however long. I've done all these jobs to your car. Unfortunately, I think we've reached a point where I'm no longer the one that's going to be able to best service your vehicle. You don't really need, like right off the bat, especially to get into you buy cheap parts and you want me to do hack repairs. I wouldn't really go that route. I would leave it as high level, as overview as possible, and use the words like, I don't think I can meet your expectations any longer. And that's gonna let them know that you guys are just in two different places. Now, if they push you and say, well, you have to do this, you're not gonna turn down a customer, you're gonna lose a customer, you might have to be a little firm with them and say, I understand how you feel, I'm sorry that we feel that way, I hate that we can't work together anymore, or I hate that it's not working for us anymore, whatever kind of flows better with you and your customer. I think it's best that you find somewhere else to have your car serviced. Handling it that way, I think, is going to be way better than just ripping them apart and telling them how bad they suck and how cheap they are and how big of a piece of crap their car is. That's not going to win any friends. And look, ultimately, it's your business, okay? If you don't want to have someone as a customer for whatever reason, it's kind of up to you. Now, there might be ramifications of this. If you fire that customer, even though you know in your heart you're doing the right thing, they could easily go to social media and blast you out on Facebook and Instagram or whatever. This place sucks, right? If we've seen videos of this kind of thing happening. You have to be prepared to defend that. I think if that were me in your situation and I, excused a customer from my building, I would probably be paying extra close attention to some of those reviews, and I would respond. And I would respond in a very similar manner to how you had the conversation with the customer. We reached a point where we were no longer coming to agreement on the proper repairs for the vehicle. I told the customer I wasn't able to meet their needs anymore, that they should find someone else more in line to what their expectations are, and then leave it at that and let people decide. To me, if I read a review of a customer that got fired from a shop, immediately my first instinct is it's probably the customer's fault more so than the shop. Then what's going to confirm that is if I see that shop reply to that review right away and say, hey, here's what actually happened. Again, keep it professional. Don't say their car sucks or, their kids are annoying. Don't say any of that dumb stuff. 100% professional. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of people where I would have just liked to have blasted with every swear word that I know and call them every name I could think of. But let's be honest, guys, that's not going to win any fights. It's not going to win any battles. It just makes you look like a jerk. Ultimately, it's your name on the building. It's your name on the repair. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, then I think you're in every right to say, hey, I don't think I can do what you're asking me to do. And they may be mad. That's just something you're going to have to deal with. If you guys have any other legit advice, again, we could blast them with swear words all day, but that doesn't help anybody. Any other legit advice, drop that down in the comment section. Let's help Paul out. And hopefully, Paul, it goes over real well. Don't say any more words than you absolutely have to, is my final piece of advice. All right, next up is from Darren. I have an 07 Mark V Jetta 2.5 6-speed Tiptronic. I have got it stuck in third gear. Would that be a neutral safety switch? Also, my sunroof randomly opens by itself, not slide open, but tip open from the back. What might cause that? Thanks, Darren. Okay, Darren, let's hit that sunroof question first. I can't never can I say it's 100% this part or this component without actually looking at the vehicle. I find that to be a bit irresponsible, but I will tell you, I got a pretty good feeling that that is actually the potentiometer. Or as you guys probably know it, the sunroof switch. The little dial that you turn to open and close the sunroof or vent the sunroof, contacts inside that switch do tend to fail, and if you hit a bump or something like that, can actually make the contact and it'll bump the sunroof open. Very rarely does it actually back the sunroof like open, it'll just vent it. Actually, the same thing happened in my Passat. My wife doesn't use the sunroof at all, so all I did was disconnect the switch or the potentiometer, solved the problem because it doesn't open now at all. If that's not what you're wanting to do and you do want to use that sunroof, put a new switch in it. 96% sure that that's what's causing the issue. Could be something else. Could be body control module, could be an electrics module, whatever. It could be a loose fuse connection, something like that. Odds are, though, it is that switch inside the sunroof, the overhead console. The transmission, definitely not the neutral safety switch. And here's how we know that. Guys, cars are very complicated, but a lot of times, and Darren, I'm not picking on you, this is just how I look at parts and names of things. Parts are called oftentimes what they do, right? A brake light switch is a switch for your brake lights. Very simple when you actually just pick the term apart and look at what the words say. Neutral safety switch is kind of the same thing. It's a switch, cool, safety, cool, and it has to do with neutral. Well, if our car is stuck in third gear, that doesn't really have a lot to do with neutral. Now, if there were a fault for neutral safety switch, we'd probably want to put one in first and then maybe diagnose the third gear issue because I guess it could, with the fault stored, kick it into limp mode. I doubt it. What you'd more likely probably happen is you wouldn't be able to get it out of park or out of neutral. There's no way to know at all why it's stuck in third gear without checking faults of the TCM. If you're running VAGCOM or OBD11 or Carista, which I have floating around here somewhere I need to test, it's going to be address word 02 and just check the faults for it. Most of the time on that generation car, when you're having an issue with the transmission being in limp mode, because that's what's happening when it's stuck in third gear, a couple of things are going to happen. The prindle, or the little display that says park, neutral, reverse, drive, low, prindle, yep, that's it, prindle. That little thing that's in the instrument cluster is going to be inverted, which means instead of the D for drive being red, it's going to be the box around that D. The box around that D is going to be red, and the D itself will be like black or whatever the color combo is. That's called an inverted prindle. That's another way you know you do have faults stored in the TCM. The most common thing I've seen with that is wiring at one of the connectors at the front of the transmission. What tends to happen, first of all, that harness is a little tight, so the wires are kind of stretched on the connector. And then what happens is oil leaks or transmission fluid leaks will actually weaken that wiring a little bit. And I've seen those wires break a number of times. It's an easy fix. You just repin a couple of wires in that connector and you're good to go. Clear the fault out and it's no big deal. So you need to get the faults checked. That's going to point you in a certain direction. If you don't have a way to check TCM faults, which a lot of cheap code readers don't have, pull the belly pan down and look at the front side of the transmission. There'll be 2 or 3 connectors about halfway up, a little closer to the engine than further from the engine, and you can give that harness a little tug and see if any wires are broken. You can disconnect it, see if there's any trans fluid inside of it. I have replaced a handful of those connector or those wire looms inside the transmission because what happens is trans fluid will leak through past the seals and into the connector that plugs into the front of the trans. So if you can't check codes, check that. Otherwise, man, you gotta check faults. Otherwise, you're just gonna be running in circles chasing your tail, and you're not going to really get anywhere. So I know a lot of people talk junk about you got to plug the car in to see what's wrong with it. Like, right, my generation, kids can't fix anything without plugging it into a computer. Well, how else are you going to know what the computer's seeing and why it's registering something wrong without pulling fault codes and checking? It seems dumb to not do that. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. All right, next one up is from Robert. Hey Charles, I lost the only set of keys to my Mark III. I know this is a ghetto question, but do you know any way of hot wiring this old bird? Thanks in advance. Robert. Okay, Robert, I'm sorry you lost your keys, and it is one of my number one fears. I don't even have my Mark III keys. I don't even know where they are. They're on another keyring somewhere, and I only have one, which is really dumb. I should go get a copy of it. In fact, I might do that after this video. If you only have one key for your car, guys, go get another key made, even if it's just to unlock the doors so you don't get locked out of it. What can we do? We lost the keys. Well, you can hotwire it. It is a Mark III, so you may or may not have to bypass the alarm module, which is pretty straightforward. I forget what wire it is. If you guys know what wire it is, post it down in the comments. Let me know. I can look at the diagram and tell you, but I just don't remember offhand. Then what you'll do is you can get like a push button start, really trick, stage 100 push button start. You can make that work. You might have to get a switch and a button in order to turn the ignition on and then fire the starter, but you'll have to wire that all up. Seen it done okay, seen it done real ghetto. As you said, most of the time it's pretty ghetto. We can also try and get a key made from a locksmith. You know, that may or may not happen. At Mark III, your old car might just have a worn out ignition switch. Or a lock cylinder switch. I might also look and just see how much it is to get a new lock set for the car. You know, this could be a driver's door lock, a trunk lock. You didn't say if it's a Golf Jetta. A trunk lock, a glove box lock, and a ignition lock. I don't think VW anymore has any cutting ability or key codes for those older ones that weren't the Sidewinder style or whatever. So you might not be able to get it from the dealer, but shop around, man. Or you know what else could work too? It's a long shot, a way long shot, but go to your local salvage yard and see maybe the Mark IIIs would still have a key with it. I have seen that. In fact, the Cabrio that we did a bunch of videos on with Pull Apart had the keys with it. So you could pull the ignition switch, pull the door lock cylinder, the trunk lock, and the glove box, and just keep the key and buy all that stuff from junkyard. Probably be the cheapest way, but I wouldn't hotwire it, man. I would want to still be able to lock the car. So my order, this is the order I'd do it in, right? Try and get a locksmith to make the key. I would second try and get new locks or used locks from a salvage yard. And then third, I'd probably try and hotwire it. It wouldn't, again, be my first choice. Good question, man. I hate it for you. It sucks. But it has inspired me to go down to the hardware store and get a copy of my Mark III key, just in case it gets locked out. I'd like to have one with the nice VW emblem or the little light on it. Maybe I'll look into that one day, and if I find that, I'll let you guys know. All right, last one of the day is from Joe. Charles, I really enjoyed your exhaust dissection video. Literally laughed out loud at the end. Would be cool to dissect other parts like old spin-on filters, struts, turbos. Yes, I think that's a great idea, and I am going to be doing more of that. On to the question, do you have a preferred order in which to disassemble, reassemble subframe components? I'm beginning to reassemble my subframe now, but thought others might be interested in order or sequence you prefer to R&R based on your experience. Thanks for all you do for the VW and wrenching community. Please keep up the awesome content. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Joe. Joe also had some information in here. It looks like he's doing coilovers and a bunch of suspension work on his B6 generation Passat and just wanted some advice. So the thing is, I don't have like a good rhythm for doing everything. At the dealer, you're doing components, a strut or a control arm or a rear trailing arm or something like that. You're doing one or two things at the most. You're not dropping the whole thing out, doing all the parts and putting it back together. That is, however, kind of what we did on the Mark V. And honestly, it doesn't really matter. Just doing control arm bushings, say, right? The process for that, because that was a really common thing on many generations of VWs. The process for me would be I'd take usually the driver's control arm off, then the passenger control arm off. Then I'd take both control arms, go to the press the bushings in and out. I would come back, I would install the drivers, I would install the passengers, then I would go through and torque all the bolts down. The way I always thought about it is I wanted to do one singular job after another after another. So job 1, remove. Job 2, press. Job 3, install. Job 4, torque. That way I wasn't, did I install those? Did I tighten it? Where was I? What am I doing? If I went to lunch, I had a clear spot where I was working. It's also easier because, okay, here's my tools to remove. Here's my tools to press. Here's my tools to install. Here's my tools to torque. When you're trying to work as efficiently as possible, that's vital. For you guys at home, it's not such a big deal, but it makes it a little easier and you can probably stay a little bit more organized. So on the front, if I was doing all the subframe or all the suspension on the front, I would do it in an order that made me have to do the least amount of work, right? Think about it, the lazy man's way of doing it. How can I take this off once and put it back once? Or how can I take a component off? Now this component is out of the way, I can do this component, but it doesn't really matter. What I would say is I would just follow that order. I'd remove either all of one side, which if you're not super experienced with doing these, I would do one corner at a time. Do the right front, do the left front. That way, if you run into an issue on the left front and you can't remember how it's supposed to go, you know that the other side is right. Kind of like doing drum brakes. Never, ever, ever should you do both of them disassemble at the same time. Do one side start to finish, do the other side start to finish. That way, if you can't remember, did that spring go this way or this way, you just look at the other side and make sure you get it installed properly. That seems a little counterintuitive or different from the remove, press, install, torque, but we're talking about 3 or 4 bolts there that you can't really screw up, and if you do, you got problems, versus one where it'll go either way. It's just one way is actually correct and the other way is not. I would also say what I would do is I would get all the parts on. I would torque down the things that don't require the vehicle to be loaded, meaning on the ground first. Then I would set the car down on the ground or on ramps or load the suspension if you need to use a floor jack or something like that. We're going to talk about all that in the Mark V suspension video. That way you know, okay, I got everything torqued that it didn't need to be on the ground for. Now I'm going to do the rest of it. Also a really good thing and a habit that I'm very into, I'll take a paint marker and paint a little line on the fastener to one, know that I've torqued it down. That line doesn't go on there until the bolt is torqued. This did bail me out on the Mark V because I missed a couple of bolts from going back and forth. If you do this right and you put a mark down, let's say the nut on the control arm, and on the control arm, what you've done is you've created another witness mark. So let's say those witness marks line up perfectly, right? It's one line. Well, now, I don't know, a sorcerer maybe comes by and unbeknownst to you, loosens one of those nuts. Well, now you can see those marks don't line up, right? So now you know, oh crap, something's happened to this fastener. I need to figure out what. Maybe you hit a pothole, maybe you hit a curb, maybe the universe wanted that nut to loosen up, which sometimes weirdly feels like what happens. You now know that this line is not lined up anymore, and you can just look at it and get the fix for it, rather than having that nut spin all the way off and you kind of run into a big time problem. It's one extra step, it takes more time, but it also gives you a quick visual indicator. All you gotta do is go, yep, everything's torqued, roll to the back, ding, 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 everything's good, I'm done. I drive it, I QC it, make sure we don't have any binding or noises, and then we know we're good to go. So a long way around to say I don't have a super good process to do it fast. I kind of take those jobs step by step, and after doing it once, look at what makes the most sense, and then if I need to on the next one, I can massage that that workflow to make it go faster or to make it go easier, to not have to take things apart and put them back together so many times. Guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Questions, comments, go down below if you like the video. Thumbs up, always appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. You can also check out the audio podcast. There's links, of course, down below, as always, to everything in the world forever. It's a billion links. Just scroll down and you'll see like 8 billion links and pick whatever your favorite is. Click it, don't click it, it's up to you. I'm gonna support you whatever you choose. So thank you for watching or listening or whatever. If you got the volume off and just watching me do this, well, that seems weird, but whatever, I'm into it. Thanks guys, and I'll talk to you again next time.